Hi, Keith. Welcome in Innsbruck. So, how did you actually get involved with animal rights and when?
Oh, how did I get involved? Or why did I get involved? Well, I got involved because I found out about animal cruelty. I discovered a slaughterhouse. It was something I'd never experienced before in my life. And it changed my life. That was the early 1980s.
And what were your first reactions to it? How did you get, what sort of activities did you do?
Well, I was horrified. That was my first reaction. And the first thing I did was stop eating meat. It was just a logical process for me. I didn't want to be part of what I was seeing. And then I went out looking for more areas of animal exploitation so I could expose them to other people. But the first thing I did was give up eating the animal products. And then I went looking for, as I say, other things so I could show other people what was going on.
So if the slaughterhouse was the first image that drew you into the movement, was it farmed animals the issue that you first started campaigning about?
Well, the minute I found out about slaughterhouses, it occurred to me that there were other things I was being lied to about, like the way animals are treated in fur farms and about hunting. So it all kind of came at once. It was just this a light came on. I saw the animals in the slaughterhouse and a light came on, and then I discovered there were other areas of animal exploitation as well that I could do something about. But that was the easiest because I was actually eating animal products at that time. And when I discovered I was part of this problem, I stopped eating them. And then I went to look to campaign against other areas of animal exploitation, like against the fur trade, for example, and fox hunting and vivisection.
Looking at the English movement, it seems that hunt sabbing was one of the primary sources of this energy, where it drew lots of people in and started really the movement going. It was also hunt sabbing that you were involved in. What sort of activity is that, and what was the aim of it?
Well, one of the things I discovered when I went out looking to learn more about animal exploitation, I met some hunt saboteurs who were campaigning on the streets to make people aware of what's happening in the hunting field. And I went out on a hunt with those people, and I discovered their tactics were so effective. They were using hunting horns to copy what the huntsman was doing, but to take the pack away from the hunted animal rather than onto the hunted animal, which is what the huntsman was doing. These are such fantastic non-violent tactics that really inspired me and got me to see that direct action can work to save lives, and non-violent direct action.
Was this already, or is this an illegal activity to disrupt a hunt in England?
Well, it is today, because it was effective. When I first got involved, it wasn't illegal to stand in a field with a hunting horn or to use an aniseed spray to cover the scent of a hunted animal. These are just fantastic tactics that I thought everybody should be involved in. At that time, they were perfectly legal and should have been encouraged, and we were encouraging people to carry out those kind of actions. But now, since they were so effective, and since the influence of the hunt forced governments to make a change, they've made those actions illegal now. So you can be arrested and sent to prison for blowing a hunting horn in a field.
So hunt sabbing was, at least when you joined it in the early 80s, you say a legal activity, so an open activity. How come that you sort of went a step further into covered activity into the ALF?
Well, I started to discover these people, they're not just violent towards other animals, they're violent towards other people as well. And one of my first experiences was seeing a man on a horse, a middle-aged man in a red coat, attacking a 15-year-old girl with a whip because she was standing in a field trying to call a pack of hounds off a fox. And that just horrified me. And these people, they have a propensity for violence that's unmatched in any other environment I've ever experienced. They're just violent people, and that kind of extreme violence and the influence they had on the police was making hunt sabotage difficult. So the tactics evolved into more covert acts of sabotage, if you like. People were going out overnight, and I got involved in this, and sabotaging hunt vehicles, so they couldn't actually get to the hunt meat, so they couldn't kill anybody, they couldn't kill any animal, they weren't going out hunting at all. They were very effective tactics.
You then sort of changed your primary focus, if it's true, I ask you, to vivisection. Is this the thing that revolts you most, that disgusts you most with animal abuse?
There's no area of violence that I'm revolted about more than any other. They're all as bad as each other. But we've put a lot of energy into vivisection because it was an area that wasn't really being tackled, and we found that we could make a difference in closing down the breeders, for example. and affecting the supply line to the laboratories. But I find any area of animal exploitation repulsive, and will do whatever I can to stop it.
In your book, you described that you also liberated animals from vivisection labs, or from vivisection lab animal breeders. Often the question arises, do these people just drop them into the woods and let them run around free, or what happens with those animals?
Well, an awful lot of work, an awful lot of energy and an awful lot of expense is put into finding good homes for animals that have been taken out of places where they're kept in cruel conditions. So that there's never... Wild animals would be released back into the wild if they're in a fur farm, for example, but all laboratory animals are always found good, caring, loving homes, and an immense amount of work is put into that to ensuring that they are looked after for the rest of their lives.
You, in 1991, eventually you were arrested. How come, and what was the things you were charged with?
Well, I was just doing too much, really. I wanted to change the world overnight, as I know a lot of people who discover animal exploitation do. So I was out every night trying to do something to make a difference, and ultimately I was arrested. First of all, I was arrested for sabotaging lorries in a slaughterhouse, where they were bringing the animals into the slaughterhouse to be killed. I caused damage to those vehicles, and I was eventually sent to prison for that, and a number of other offences, which were all property related.
You got an amazing 14 years prison sentence, and that was by far the largest prison sentence by then for an animal rights activist. How would you now say, how would you judge that now? Why was that sentence given?
Well, I became a victim of my own success, and because of the success of the movement. We started to make big inroads into these big areas of animal exploitation. We were making a difference, and the authorities decided to clamp down and make a difference to stop us doing what we were doing. And I actually took this 14-year prison sentence as something of a compliment. That my actions were effective, and therefore I was being punished for it. So, amazing. I don't know if that's how I describe the prison sentence, but it was outrageous, certainly. And people who harm life, animal life and human life, don't get sentences anything like that. So, as I say, for me it was a compliment.
A 14 years prison sentence is something that would shock everybody. Did it shock you? Did you regret what you did? Did you try to get somehow out? I mean, were you never tempted, like, by becoming a grass or something?
Oh, no, absolutely not. To answer your last question first, no, never in a million years, and no regret whatsoever for trying to make the world a better place for other beings. I would never regret that. Never in a million years. How did you cope with the prison? Well, I had an immense amount of support from decent people across the world who helped me get better food in prison, kept me supplied with all the bits and pieces I needed, wrote to me every day of the year. And I used to think to myself, well, I'm in prison, I'm going to get out in a few years, but the animals that I've tried to help are never going to get out. Their suffering is incredible, and it's unimaginable. So my suffering I put into a different category to that. That's partly how I dealt with it, by remembering the suffering of other animals that I tried to help and what they were going through.